The sun had barely risen today, but I felt a shift in the air. Something deeper than the tangible, the ceremonial. Yesterday's inauguration, full of energy and excitement, seemed like a distant memory as I woke up to face the reality of the office I now hold. A new chapter had begun, yes, but the weight of that responsibility was far greater than I had imagined. I had taken the oath to lead the free world, and the world, in its own way, was already testing me. Today, I felt the first true bite of the challenge that lay ahead. It was not just about governing a nation. It was about confronting the shadows of history that loomed large over our present. My day began early, as I made my way to the Oval Office. The stillness of the morning contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of events that had transpired just 24 hours before. My advisors, Dean Rusk and McGeorge Bundy, were already there waiting for me. Dean, as always, had his notes neatly arranged before him, and McGeorge, ever the pragmatic strategist, greeted me with a firm handshake. Their voices carried the weight of experience and the knowledge of the times. We discussed the Soviet Union, as it always seemed to come back to the Soviets. The Cold War cast a long shadow over our every decision. Mr. President, Rusk began, we are entering a time when we cannot afford to appear weak. Khrushchev has made his intentions clear. We must be ready to defend freedom at any cost. I could hear the urgency in his voice, but I also heard a hint of caution. He knew the stakes, as did I, but there was no easy answer. I needed to balance strength with diplomacy, a razor-thin line to walk. As Rusk spoke, I found my thoughts drifting momentarily to my brother, Robert, the newly appointed Attorney General. He had been with me through every major decision I had made over the years, from the Senate to the campaign trail. I knew he would be a fierce ally in the months to come, but today I was reminded of the generational divide between us. He, only a few years my junior, was now stepping into the position that had once seemed so distant. I could sense that, even now, the world expected much from us. He had always had a sharp, unwavering vision of justice, but I could tell the weight of it all was beginning to show. Later in the day, Robert and I met privately in the West Wing. It was a moment of quiet between the chaos of meetings and phone calls. He looked at me with the same intensity that had characterized our entire relationship. "Jack," he began, "the world is watching, but so is the country. They're going to test you. They're going to test us. But more than anything, they'll look to you for direction. We must not fail them." I thought about his words for a long while. There were many who doubted us, who doubted our ability to navigate the difficult waters that lay ahead. But Robert's reminder stung in the best possible way. We could not afford to falter. I had been given this opportunity not just to preserve the status quo, but to create a legacy, to shape the world into something better for those who would come after us. Later in the afternoon, I sat with my Vice President, Lyndon B. Johnson. His presence, always imposing, was a mixture of charm and intensity. Johnson had a way of making you feel the weight of his words. We were alone in my office, discussing the delicate balance between the administration's domestic and foreign policies. I could see the tension in his face as he spoke, knowing how much was riding on our success in the Senate. "Jack, we have the power," he said, his voice gravely serious. "But we must use it wisely. The Senate is full of men who've spent decades building their own power. They'll be watching you, watching us." His eyes narrowed, as if testing my resolve. I could sense the depth of his experience, the years he had spent in the corridors of power. His words echoed in my mind as the day wore on. He was right, of course. The Senate, with all its intricate politics and long-standing traditions, was no friend to a new administration. But Lyndon had a rare understanding of that world, one that I would need if I were to succeed. He had warned me about the bold guard, the men who held the keys to the Senate and would test me at every turn. As the sun set, I found myself walking the hallways of the White House, reflecting on everything that had transpired. I thought about the immense pressure that had been placed on my shoulders, but also about the hope that had been ignited within the hearts of millions. Jacqueline, always perceptive, seemed to sense my unease as soon as I returned to our quarters. She met me at the door, a soft smile playing on her lips. "How was your first day?" she asked, though she knew better than anyone that this was no ordinary first day. "It was weighty," I replied, the words coming out softer than I had intended. She took my hand and led me to a quiet corner of the room. I had always admired her strength, the way she kept a calm center even when the storm raged around her. Her words that evening gave me solace. "You are not alone in this, Jack. We will face it together." Jacqueline had always been my steady rock, and in that moment, I realized how much I needed her by my side. The road ahead would not be easy, but with her, I felt I could face whatever came our way. Later that night, after a long dinner with several members of my cabinet, including some I had yet to truly get to know, I retreated to my private study. The day had been filled with important conversations, with people who could change the course of history, but now, in the solitude of the study, the gravity of what I had committed to truly settled in. I sat at my desk, staring out at the darkening sky, the weight of the world pressing down on me. It wasn't just the decisions of the day that lingered in my mind, but the knowledge that tomorrow, the next day, and every day after that would present challenges, some big and some small, but each with the potential to shape history. Adlai Stevenson, who had been a friend and advisor for years, had joined us for dinner that evening. He was a man of wisdom, someone whose experience in global politics could not be overstated. "You may have power, Jack," he said in a quiet moment, "but with it comes the responsibility to use it wisely. Don't let the weight of it crush you. The world is waiting, but it needs your guidance." I nodded, his words ringing in my mind. Wisdom. It wasn't just the power of the presidency that mattered. It was how that power was wielded. I had to be smart, careful, and above all, compassionate. The shadow of the past, of war, division, and uncertainty, would have to be confronted before I could lead us into the future. As the night grew late, I found myself standing by the window, staring out into the night, knowing that the path ahead would be long and fraught with trials. But for now, I understood that confronting the past, the mistakes and missteps of our nation, would be the first step toward creating a brighter future. And as I lay down to sleep tonight, I do so knowing that the next day will bring new challenges and new opportunities to lead. The shadows of the past may be long, but they will not define us. We will make our own future. John F. Kennedy.